What's up guys, Jester here, and this is going to be the patch 7.14 notes review. So Kayn coming out in 7.14, sure. Alistar Unbreakable reduced damage now goes from 50, 60, 70 to 55, 65, 75, and now it's just a clarity buff, so it tells you how much damage you're mitigating. But the problem is that Alistar is a situational pick as well, because Alistar is extremely flash reliant, because otherwise you just space the Alistar W and then Alistar can't get combo off. So also as a melee champion, you have like certain matchups that you shouldn't be taking against certain range champions. But overall, Alistar is in an okay position to be picked. The thing is that champions like Tahm Kench or Braum are the primary melee champions, because Braum can engage without needing flash most of the time, because he can jump to a team, and Tahm Kench has utility. So Alistar kind of defaults to like a third pick in the melee champ position. You would only really want to pick him for the combo CC, ECC. The R mitigation damage isn't one of the big reasons why you pick Alistar, because if you wanted a tank, you should get it from most of the time the top lane, because damage reduction is important, because as the support you build a lot of health items, so the percentage down decrease is more valuable due to Sightstone and due to redemption and things like this. But the trend is that Locket is being built by a lot of the more melee champions. So because Locket is more armor MR, it doesn't make use of the health efficiency of the damage reduction percentage. Either way, Alistar can be picked up occasionally, but it's going to be situational and very, I feel like, player reliant, rather than relying on the champion, because there are so many better engaged champions. Caitlyn got attack speed growth stat down. This is important, but Caitlyn's still on top because of her range and all that. Cho'gath E, next to your basic attacks launch, spikes that damage and slow all targets. So it's not going to be a passive, it's going to be a active spell with cooldown 8 to 4. 30 mana cost, which is fairly negligible, I think. Base damage, this is unchanged in power, but now it's going to get 4% target maximum health, 0.5% per fuse target, so that's going to be more damage in net when you have the Vorpal spike up, but when you don't have the Vorpal spike up because of the cooldown, like this damage doesn't do that much early, because target maximum health early is less. As early on you have less max health based on base scaling HP. But now you get the decaying slow, so this is kind of nice. This is a fair trade-off, because now instead of just pure damage, it has some decaying slow. So because it's an auto attack reset now, you can just auto E and then you can rack your 30 to 50% slow, decaying slow over 1.5 seconds, so that's really nice. And the extra basic attack damage is nice. So this kind of changes Cho'gath's laning phase from I'm going to shove you in with autos with my Vorpal spikes, that now I have a potential another way of getting more damage on you with a basic attack reset. It's more bursty, because now you're getting more damage and you're getting an auto reset, so your next autos come out faster. You're getting the attack range and you're getting the decaying slow, so you're going to get more autos off in gang situations. So I kind of like this change. It kind of, because if you wanted to perma-shove, you could probably pick a better champion that could go full tank. You know, a lot of the other tanks have fairly, like, if you pick a range champion, you could shove better. But if you wanted to pick a melee, and we're talking about like top or mid here, you know, champion that needs a shove as a shoving priority, you'd, I don't know, maybe pick Echo or something like that. Or maybe Nautilus or something like that. Galio. So I feel like Cho'gath now becomes somebody with a little bit more damage. But that being said, Cho'gath isn't played for various reasons already. The damage is pretty much the same, just losing 5 damage, but gaining 30 less mana cost, so this is effectively a buff, because the numbers are the same, pretty much. So, buff to early game, and then W, silence duration increased. So, obviously, the changes are clear buffs, because you're going to have more leeway to do more Qs, your W's going to be more effective, and your E's going to be more effective outside of shoving. But we have to tackle the reason why Cho'gath isn't picked in the first place. And I feel like Cho'gath does have a role to somewhat be picked, Because if you think about, not in the mid lane, but if you think about in the top lane, for example, if you think about the counter picks to a potential Galio, then you might be like, okay, well, nobody counters Galio, does percentage health, has this global. But Cho'gath is one of those champions that you kind of just give infinite scaling to it up against the Galio. You can just build an MR item and then just have a free laning phase as well. You can push and whatever. That being said, the top lane situation is moving now into a very bruiser offense-oriented style, in which case Cho'gath probably isn't the best pick. Cho'gath in the jungle probably can't contest other junglers because you don't have low enough cooldowns and you'll probably die to other junglers, so probably won't be picked. Diana attack speed passively grants 20% attack speed to Diana's spellcast grants 20% attack speed for her next 3 attacks, inclusive with Moonfall's damage. Moonsilver Blade attacks restore mana equal to 15% of Diana's ability power. So this is kind of an answer back to the D-ring change. As most Diana players would go multiple D-rings because there's no good mana item Diana can pick up. The closest mana item Diana would be able to pick up, because going Morello is super, super insane on a melee AP assassin, is Rod of Ages, or, Sheen maybe. But she doesn't really have any good mana items she can build after her 1D ring, which is why she might have to go Darkseal or something like that. So the fact that she's getting mana back with her attacks is equal to 15% of Diana's ability power is pretty good, because Diana pretty much rushes ability power anyway in her first big item. So she's not going to have as much of her mana promise, which is one of the main faults of Diana after the D-ring change. And the fact that she's getting her 20% attack speed for over her next 3 attacks instead of the total is a nerf, but the fact that you get this mana restoration looks good. Cooldown down early, so this is a buff. Cost down early, so this gives her more shove initiative. And E Moonfall attack speed. Wow, increases Moonsilver's Blade attack speed bonus to 50 to 90%. So you're still going to be maxing E last, so now you're going to be... you get this on cast. I mean, it doesn't really matter, because if you're close enough to get to auto attack them, you're probably going to be using your E anyway. So the fact that you're getting 50% bonus attack speed in the early levels is more than this 20%. So this, it's more of a burst situation, right? Because now you're getting your 20% attack speed over 3 attacks plus the 50, so you're getting more than you did before, and you're getting mana buff and then buff. So Diana seems to be a pretty interesting situation, because the way you pick Diana is you don't really pick Diana in the jungle because lack of CC and initiative. You could pick Diana in the jungle for sort of jungle clear and whatever, but you have low gank initiative, so you could pick him in a situation where you need an AP jungler. But that being said, the primary AP jungler is going to be Elise, and Elise probably will beat out the Diana in the 1v1. If W does get reset, then maybe Diana has a shot with all this attack speed. But more likely than not, Elise is probably better than Diana in the jungle. So then you look at Diana mid and Diana top. Diana top might be able to contest the current AD champions, but you'll probably just get wrecked against Jace and other AD champions, because if you're up against Kled, who also has an attack speed steroid, and they're building AD damage and you're building AP damage, then you're going to be losing out on the attack war. So kind of default as a shover in the mid lane and a shover in the top lane, and try and get through the early laning phase, which is the main problem that Diana has, is because kind of plays it like an Echo, where you kind of just shove because you have bad matchups if you don't shove. So the fact that Q cooldown is down gives you 2 seconds quick run and shove, which maybe you can do your Raptor camp or your Wolf camp a little bit faster, you get your base a little bit faster. The W cost decrease also gives you more efficient shoves, maybe you can stay for 1 or 2 more waves, which is really nice, and the attack speed is... I mean, if you have to use the spell for it, you won't really access this, but as a fighting tool, it's going to be overall better. So Diana fills the role of an Echo now. Where do you see Echo picked? Not really. If you want to play in the top lane, you have a long lane, an elongated lane, so even if you do shove, a lot of times you'll be up against champions that can freeze, and so if they just freeze outside their tower, you're pretty much dead anyway, whereas in the mid lane, the freeze potential is less because champions have less base HP in the mid lane, and are going to be running less resistances in general. So and less resistances in their kit. So playing Diana in the mid lane is probably the most optimal situation. But if you want to run Diana in the mid lane, you're kind of giving up control of roam and not first mover initiative, but because you can shove and they can shove. It may be in certain matchups, right? Maybe in certain range matchups you don't want to pick Diana, but in certain matchups such as, I don't know, maybe Galio for example, even though Galio will get efficiency out of building it more, like maybe up against Zed specifically, or I don't know, Riven specifically, maybe up against other melee champions who don't shove as well as you, or maybe up against specific range champions that can't shove as well as you. Not RAs because they can shove, not RAs because they can shove and hold phrases with the shield, but maybe up against Zed particularly, you can have this Diana pick. You can shove first and then rotate first, which is super, super important. So maybe Diana comes in there. Fiora, bonus move speed 2050 to 1530, so that's a Fiora nerf. Grand Challenge no longer grants still move speed. So the move speed isn't the move speed is nice for Fiora, but one of the main reasons why Fiora is strong is because of the low cooldown potential of the Q. And insofar as that's the case, and you can almost always have her post up, and you have your crit, you just have way too much damage. This passive doesn't actually mean that much. Like you can Q, maybe there are small micro situations where you'll miss out on a kill where you Q forward and you can't chase as much, or you Q away and you escape a gank. But overall, Fiora is still in the same spot. It looks like. Garen out of combat regen 2, 4, 10 max health to 2%, 8% at level 11. So they're giving him more of a earlier spike at level 11 instead of the 16 spike. Out of combat 9-4, and this is just a pure buff. Regeneration increases 460% health when Garen is below certain health threshold. Okay. That means that your lane staying potential and your split push potential stays a little bit. But the thing about split push is if you're taking that much damage in a split push, then you're probably losing already. Unless you do a really big trade and then you back off and they back off, but why would they trade with you knowing that this is a Garen passive? So overall, this doesn't really come into fruition outside of the lane phase or outside of certain team fights. Because let's say you team fight, get out, and then get back in. That's going to be one of the major situations. And let's say that you do a lane phase fight, you're level 11, you're still in lane phase for whatever reason. In the lane phase, they probably won't trade with you unless they think you have lethal with you, right? So this only really, it impacts the situation, because it might help you survive a little more in the lane phase, but overall this is more of a team fight situation, and Garen's not someone that we see picked in the first place, but if you were to team fight with Garen, it wouldn't be an optimal situation either. Now grants 60% damage reduction, tenacity, return to normal. Okay, E-judgment, percentage total attack damage. See, this is the thing, Garen isn't allowed to build total AD anyway, because he's a melee champion with no real gap closer outside of Q. So overall, Garen's going to be in the same shitty spot as it is, and this only changes the team fight marginally, but there's no point of even talking about Garen. Self-slow, down, okay, sure. Rammus is still shitty. We'll lose the aggro matchups in the top lane. You could play him as a tank in the top lane, but Rammus is just going to be a worse Galio most of the time. And then in the jungle, you don't contest the jungle initiative, so don't pick Rammus. Base health for Singe up, growth stat up. What? Singe is already super annoying. Okay, when Singe passes within 225 range champion, he drifts off them, gaining 20% move speed for 2 seconds. If I has a champion unique 10 second. Okay, so Singe no longer gains health based on his maximum mana. So this is kind of interesting because no one was really building a lot of mana on Singe in the first place. You kind of build your D-ring, your seal, your dark seal, and then maybe you go into your righteous glory. Unlikely you see Roa these days, but could happen. But not gaining health off is perfectly okay, because the unique move speed bonus is it's a stat on its own, but it's not a power stat. But Singe doesn't really need power stats because Singe has so much innate power in its kit, especially with this extra 70 base HP and health regen. Singe just runs past all the other tanks anyway and proxies, and Singe against aggro matchups kind of still beats Jax, still beats Kled. Like, Cinch kind of bypasses all the aggro matchups anyway, except maybe Jace in the top lane. Poison Trail down, ratio AP up, so this looks like a nerf. Particle size increase, the more clearly represent. Poison Trail no longer disappears, so this looks like a clear nerf. You don't build enough AP anyway, and the base damage is super important. Area duration down, now grounds units, so now it kind of acts like a Cassio W. Slow, 40% at all ranks. No longer lingers. Cost down, cooldown down. So, or cooldown worse. Okay, so they're giving Cinch more utility, right? I would say that this isn't really as much as a nerf as you think it is, because let's say Cinch throws a mega adhesive right in the center of you. It's not going to take you 3 seconds to get out of it anyway, right? If you walk to one of the edges, like it doesn't take you 5 seconds to get to the edges. So this isn't really as big of a numbers nerf or time nerf as it looks like, because you would be getting out of the mega adhesive anyway. Now the grounds unit is interesting. Would you take ground unit over slow? Probably. There's a lot of utility in it because you're not going to be scaling your W till last anyway. So the fact that it goes up from 35 to 40% slow is actually a buff, because you're not going to be accessing this additional slow till the later parts of the game. And insofar as that's the later parts of the game, if you're split pushing a side lane, you don't really care because there's only one person there. So it doesn't really have like overall huge impact. And in your if you're team fighting, you would probably much rather prefer grounding targets than slowing them, because they can probably get out of it. The cost is down, so this is a clear buff, and the cooldown is increased. But you don't really care about the cooldown increase because you only really get it off once anyway. So I'm going to say that even though this looks like a nerf in some aspects, it's going to be an overall buff, because all the parts of it, the moving parts, like you don't care about the timer. Ground is better than slow. You skill it last. Cooldown, you only use it once, negligible, and then cost is like buff. So it looks like buff, buff. Sure, you don't get this extra health, but you get so much base health. And then the move speed is going to be as annoying as possible. The fact that you lose base damage means that you're going to be needing a bit more mana in your kit to clear the waves, or maybe you're going to have to base one wave earlier. Fling is down, so clear buff, and cost is down. Bonus stats are up, so buff. So Cinch is getting buffed out. Everything about Cinch looks like it's getting buffed outside of the health bonus. With his max mana and the Q damage. But if you can get past the Q damage, it seems like Cinch is getting really, really strong. And I feel like Cinch is already a top contestable pick in the top lane, because Cinch does so many things. Cinch can shove, Cinch bypasses lane phase, Cinch operates as a tank, can operate as engage, can operate as peel. So I feel like Cinch is gonna be a counter, or at least a bypass against all the potential top lane picks, all the tanks and all the aggro champions except maybe Jace. So watch out for Cinch. Mana regen, okay. Mana growth stat down. You don't really care about growth stat on Taric that much. Like, supports don't really need to worry about growth stat. It's really just a level 125. Healing per charge 20 to 60, 1.5 bonus health to 30. So buffed in the early and max health. So I think that insofar as you max Q, this is going to be a nerf, because at level 4 you're going to be breaking even, and you don't really need to use that many heals early on. Plus 1% of Taric's base health is down from 1.5, and you build a lot of health in support role. As we described earlier, max charge is 3 at all ranks, but now you get more, so it's better late. The real question is this good for him? Probably not. So you're going to max Q on Taric anyway, right? But you're going to access that at level 9. But your heals on Taric are fairly negligible. You'd rather have it early, because you don't really heal a lot until you have really late max health, or like you'd rather have it early for trades. So the fact that this is going from 3 to 1, and you're only going to be picking up 2 at level 4 and 3 at level 5 is pretty bad, because you're breaking even at level 7-ish, which is worse, because you're getting less healing per charge, less charges, and less effective healing with this. Plus the cost is increased, so this looks like an overall nerf. New cooldown is 3, which is fine, but doesn't really matter when you can't have more than one charge anyway. Recharge rate is 15. Reduces start touch cooldown by 1 second, instantly grants a charge. So if you auto them with your bravado, then you get the charge, but it doesn't really matter. So this is a huge nerf to Taric. Taric is one of the things that we don't mention when we talk about the melee champions, because similar to Alistar, your 1 CC. Well, I mean, you only have 1 CC, right, with your E. And then to access that CC, you almost need to flash all the time. So Taric is like way below Alistar in that Alistar has 3 CCs and Taric has 1. Taric has more defensive capabilities for their team, but you can bypass that by playing Karma or whatever, or something else. Dazzle damage up by 40, so this is a lot of all-in potential, but you're losing trade potential here and you're gaining all-in potential here. Not a big fan. Cooldown down, stun duration up. So I feel like Taric is still falling behind everything. These look like clear nerfs in the early, and that's all that really matters for a support player. And these are damage increases, but if you cared about damage, you would play a range champion. So Taric falls way behind Alistar. The Yorick change. Mistwalker now attacks immediately upon jumping. Sure. Okay. Base damage down early, up later. It looks pretty bad. I'd rather have 10 base than 100 late. So this looks bad. Percent ID, morning, missed reaction range, engraved despawn range. So these look like pretty clear buffs, but you're pretty much in the face of them anyway if you're playing Yorick, so I'd rather have this 8 damage from the passive. R cooldown down a little bit, base health up a little bit. So the kind of way that Yorick works out is that you kind of pick Yorick as a bruiser, but he's not a bruiser that contests other bruisers, right? Yorick might have some percentage situation wins against the top lane damage dealers like Kled and Fiora, but overall you'll fall behind and you're not as good of a tank. You have a lot of utility with your W and a slow with your E, but of course these damage changes like bring them, like you're a worse tank and you're a worse bruiser player most of the time. You kind of use your R for split pushing sometimes, you can do that, but overall it doesn't seem like Yorick's in a spot that's going to be good enough, even though the W is really useful. Nunu base health regen down, armor down. Nunu probably deserves it. Zac stretch range down, probably deserves it. Thornmail, Bramble Vest. Well, we should talk about the Bramble Vest first. Cloth armor 300 gold, 35 armor. So you're not getting the efficiency because the extra 300 gold you could have bought another cloth, which would be 45 armor. Upon being hit by basic attack, reflects 20 magic damage, inflicting grievous wounds on target. So this is really strong. This gives tanks access to grievous wounds, which is something that tanks didn't have access to before. Because let's say you're a tank in the top lane versus a Ravenous Hydra, then on Fiora, then you have some access to grievous wounds now. This is a really strong build. Like, think about it. It's 900 gold for 20 magic damage, if you look at it, per basic attack, right? Now, if you look at basic attacks early, like, look at 900 gold, right? 900 gold is almost like a pickaxe, 875, which is 25 AD. So, it's kind of broken, because you're paying, effectively, the cost of a pickaxe for 20 damage for every auto they do, so it's almost the same. You're getting 5 less, plus grievous wounds, plus 35 armor. So this looks like a really strong broken item for the tanks. Maybe putting tanks back on the map in the top lane against AD champions, which kind of makes AP top laners a bit more effective, because the only people that are going to build Bramble Vest should be the tanks, right? Because they're the ones that are going to be getting hit by the basic attacks. So if we look at where the tanks are, it's mostly the top, the jungle, and Galio mid, roughly. But if Galio mid is up against an AD champion, it's probably going to be Jace or Zed. And if Galio is up against Jace or Zed, this might be one of the premier builds that Galio is going to run. But in the top lane, all those tanks, the Maokais, the Nautiluses, all the tanks can access the Bramble Vests. Bramble Vest, Ruby Crystal Warden's Mail. So cost is up to 2,900 from 2,350. So that's a lot, but that's probably because Bramble Vest is really good now, and it builds out of Warden Mail. So now you're getting less armor by 25. You're getting 250 health. So this operates sort of like a Sunfire Cape now in that it gives health and armor, and it operates as a Randuin's because it gives health and armor as well. Upon being hit by Big's attack, affects bonus damage equal to 25 plus 10% of your bonus armor, inflicting grievous wounds. When hit by Big's attack, cripple source of attack speed by 15%. So wow, that is super sick. So obviously you get the Warden's Mail Cold Steel passive. So you kind of have to decide between Randuin's and a Thornmail now. But the thing is, Thornmail gives you grievous wounds, and it gives you the reflection damage. So let's look at it in a variety of ways, right? If we look at the Randuin's slow in comparison to the Thorn's passive, which would you pick, the slow or the Thorn's passive, right? Well, for engagers, maybe you want to go in for the slow, but so rarely do you get a slow that's so important from Randuin's that it would be better than the Thorn's passive. Because if you're building armor, then you arguably are going to build more armor, maybe an MR after, but like the 25 is already like so efficient. You're getting 75 armor, 250 health, right? So you're covering both the stats, your resistance and your health. And you're also covering back a way to fight back, whereas Randuin's doesn't really give you a way to fight back against those champions in split push. So if you're picking, I don't know, Zac, and you have a way of dealing with their AD, or in the split push scenario you're picking a tank, just seems like a really, really strong item, because the access to grievous wounds gives a lot of answer backs to AD carries that are trying to hit you with lifesteal as a Bork build, or as a BT or a Death Stance 3rd, 4th item. And in the split push, almost all the AD tops, Kled, Fiora, are going to have Ravenous Hydra, or maybe Kled has Titanic or whatever. I don't know, it feels like a really strong... This feels like the new Randuin's, because Randuin's doesn't seem as good as this. New Ancient Coin line. Favored is upgraded to temperature, and you gain an elixir, grants bonus skill. Nearby allies gain 8% move speed while moving towards you. Wow. So, Ancient Coin actually now does something. It doesn't just grant you a bonus skill, which is like negligible, but it actually helps allies by giving them 8% move speed when they move towards you. So you think about the people that can take the Ancient Coin line, the Jannas, the Sorakas, and you kind of feel like, okay, well, that'd be really nice for it, right? Because we don't really make efficient use of the Spell Thieves. And the Spell Thieves upgrade is kind of shitty, right? So it almost acts like really, really good, because that's a lot of move speed you have on your utility champions, on your utility supports. It just seems like... It seems like the direction Ancient Coin would go, because Ancient Coin seems like a way of conceding the lane when you pick these passive champions, and you're going to get all-in on by the Threshers and the Brahms. But now with this, like, even though you're still going to be all-in, you have more late efficiency. Whereas before, your late efficiency was 1 bonus skill, which isn't that important. So Randuin's also 29, right? So you're getting 150 more gold health compared to the Thornmail. And the build is relatively the same. So would you trade 150 health for how much health does Randuin's have? Or how much armor does Randuin's have? 60. Wow, you're actually getting less. So you're getting 15 more armor traded off for 150 HP, which is a fair trade-off, mind you. And the only difference is you're picking the Randuin's passive slow over this passive. Now, why would you ever want to do that? Is the slow really that important? Like, maybe in a small percentage of situations it'll help you, but this is way better overall. I see Thornmail being built like way more, and Randuin's being built way less. Don't build Randuin's anymore. Lethality grants armor penetration based on your level. Okay, so that's cool. Except for Yomu's Ghostblade, Lethality no longer grants out of combat move speed. That kind of sucks. So Duskblade and Edge get no more out of combat move speed. That kind of sucks for him, but it's whatever. Serrated Durek, Headhunter. After killing an enemy, your next damaging spell will deal 40 bonus physical damage to all enemies it hits. What? So there's more damage and less move speed. So I kind of like this, because you didn't really build it for the move speed anyway. If you want to build move speed, you would have built a Zeal. So Headhunter, after killing an enemy, your next damaging spell will deal 30 bonus physical damage to all enemies it hits. It's kind of a Jin item. Maybe a Zed or a Jace item. And maybe some extremely aggro Fiora items. So here's the way you look at it. The item that you're going to be building when you build Serrated Dirk is most of the time going to be Youmuu's, right? When you build Youmuu's, you think about the champions that can build Youmuu's. Your Jace, your Zed, your Jin, your MF, your very aggro Fioras, right? So it's saying if you kill somebody, then and you're going to attack someone else, then you're going to deal 40 extra damage, right? So it's DPS champions. Basically champions that can kill one person and then still go on to kill another person. It's not actually assassins, but champions that have continuous DPS, like Fiora, like the Jace, maybe a little bit of Zed, and most likely Jin, right? So let's say you kill someone with your Jin ult, your next ult is going to do 40 more damage. So this is nice. It doesn't really hammer down the assassins, right? Like when I think about this relative to Shaco, then Shaco kills one person, doesn't kill the next person, because it uses all the bursts to kill the first person. Maybe like in some situations you kill someone, you get out, and then you can use the 30-second cooldown to kill someone else. But most of the time it's probably not. So this looks more DPS-y, which is okay. I don't really have a problem with the Poacher's Dirk. Same. Duskblade. Cost down. So I like that cost is being down. Lethality up. So I like up. 80 down. I'm not a fan of 80 down, but lethality up seems okay. Like 3 lethality for 10 AD. It's close. Plus 350 less. Like, this is 350 less gold. So if you use the 350 gold to buy another longsword, you make up for this 80 anyway. No, so it now grants 10% CDR. I don't know how I feel about that. Night Stalker damage, 75 plus 0.2 lethality and 90 plus 15 per level. So 2 times lethality. So if, let's say this was our only lethality item at 18, 2 times that would be 36 lethality damage. But now, so now we're getting 15 flat damage. So 36 minus 15 is 21. So we need this to make up for 21 damage. So 15 per level. And that seems like a lot of damage. So it's 15 damage per level. Like, you just need 1 level, so it's perfectly fine. And the base is 105. So yeah, this is a damage buff. Night Stalker now slows the target by 99%, sure. And increase the 5 seconds, so buff. Okay, so it's a numeric damage buff because you can just, you finish the item earlier, you can spend another 350 gold on your 80 to build up this 1080 difference. No longer grants some bonus move speed, but that's whatever, because now you get way more damage because of this. It's way more damage. You slow the target for a little bit, which is nice. You get a little bit of CDR, which is okay, I guess. You know, it doesn't hurt. And then, yeah, this is up a little bit. So, Duskblade is looking really strong. So we look at the champions that build Duskblade, and it's pretty much the pure assassins like Zed. And in competitive play, that would be. And would Zed like this 10% CDR? Hell yeah. Would Zed like the lower costs? Yeah. Basically, Zed buff in relevance to Shaco. Yeah, I don't really care about the CDR that much. Kind of inefficient for me. I don't really care about the 99% slow for 0.25 seconds. Like, this is actually nothing. But yeah, I mean, I'd probably still build it. Youmuu's, sure, out of combat move speed to 40, lethality up, 80 down, that's fine. We lose 5 lethality for 5 AD for 3 lethality. That's a trade-off I'll probably make. Edge of Night, Serrated Dirk Pickaxe, Golden Change, Ruby Crystal instead of No Magic Mantle. That kind of changes it. So there's no more magic resist on Edge, but now it counts 250 health. Lethality up 80 unchanged. So we're swapping out 35 MR for 250 health. So I think that gives more flexibility for Edge, because now you can build Edge into 80 matchups as well, and not just the AP matchups or whatever. And then you still have the active to deal with some of the AP damage. So the thing about it was, if you were building Edge first item, you got 35 MR, now you need to build health after, right? So let's say you're Zed versus, I don't know, in Oriana, and you decide to rush Edge, right? Or maybe versus Corki or whatever, right? because that's basically the only match you're going to do this. And you needed a way to access health MR because to combat an AP damage dealer, you need both the resist and the health, right? So we think about where Zed, for example, would get health and where they would get MR. So Zed would probably get health most of the time from Cleaver. Like, what health items does Zed build? Not much, really, right? It kind of goes, like, your first time is going to be Death Stance or Yomu's or, you know, Edge of Night or Maw, which is all, like, all of them don't have health. So now that you have access to one item that can build health, like, you can, like, this is a buff to Zed, in my opinion, because now you have a way to access health. Because you don't really want to build Black Cleaver, right? You don't really want to build Black Cleaver up against a Corki that's not building any armor against you, really. And outside of Ninja Tabby, maybe sometimes they do, but the Sork Trees is super crucial. So, like, now you have a way to access health, and then you can still go, like, you can go Hex Drinker for your MR, right? You always have the access to Hex Drinker. So I feel like this is a overall positive change because Edge of Night wasn't being used in the first place, because previously when you built Edge of Night you had MR, but now you needed a way to build health. But now that gives health, you can access your MR from Hex Drinker. So this is really strong. Additionally, your Kha'Zixes also don't have a good way of doing that if they're building full assassin, because if you're building Edge of Night, then you're building Serrated Dirk, so you're pretty much going the full assassin route instead of the more conserved Black Cleaver Bruisery route. So now that you get health from Edge of Night, you can also build Maw into your build and have an efficient response to AP damage. Medium-sized Crux can now be smited. Okay. Sure. Vision abilities, cast range changed to 800. Okay. If Pantheon tries to Q E Heartseeker during W, he'd be basic attacking the target once completed. Change only affects following abilities. Change several interactions where abilities override. So, okay, it just looks like the way things change. Rank flex party now restricted. It's the same as solo queue. All rank flex parties can now include players within one tier. Okay, so I think it opens up the range. Yeah. Yeah. So now D5 can queue with Plat 5, whatever. Dark Singularity returns, sure. And bug fixes, whatever, right? Upcoming sins, Poe Party Fear, Chroma Skins. Okay, so overall, Kane's coming out. Kane's gonna be cool. Alistar's still bottom tier. Caitlyn's still top tier. Cho'gath's still garbage. Diana light counterpick to Zed. Fiora's still top. Garen's still garbage. Ram's still garbage. Singe, watch out for Singe. Best top lane pick probably. Taric, outside of Jace, of course, because Jace counters. Taric's still garbage below Alistar. Yorick's still garbage. Nunu, Zac, getting numbers reduced, good. Thornmail, better than Randuin's. Bramblefist, good rush item. Ancient Coin, good for Janice Soraka. Randuin's now worse than Thornmail. Serrated Dirk, now cool. Everyone that's going to build this is still going to build it. Edge of Night, really good for Zed mid. And yeah. Alright, so that was the patch 7.14 review. Thank you guys for watching. And hopefully we see some good games come in. See you guys next time.